It's hard to get into the mind of an aggressor, especially these two, Netanyahu and Trump. But why would they hit this school? They had to know that it was not an active military base.
They would have known. There is a woman, a former counter-terrorism US official, who's done a lengthy spiel on this, and she says it was clear they knew what it was. And even the Tomahawk missiles themselves have video and send intelligence back to the operators, basically. So they could have aborted at the last moment. So she is very clear that this was a deliberate act of terrorism aimed to intimidate the people. I mean, after all, it's not the only school that was hit. We saw young sportsman in hospital in Shiraz. The whole team of school kids playing soccer were hit by a missile there. There's many attacks on civilian sites. We saw that the family of a post office worker in Tabriz who was killed, and his children likely escaped, but they're swearing revenge. And then we saw the entire family of a IRGC commander. When he was murdered at home, his mother and wife were murdered with him. Two of his three children were murdered, and the third child, a little girl, we visited her in hospital, Zainab, and she had burnt lungs. She was on life support in there. So it's not like the school children in Manab. It was a shocking thing on the first day where they had time to consider exactly what they were hitting, but it's not the first time they hit school children or civilian sites. Basically, in my estimation, most of the strikes on Iran, and the Red Crescent told us in Tehran that there were 81,000 strikes on civilian sites. When we got to Shiraz, it was up to 85,000. So, of course, they were killing some people, some in the leadership at the same time, but really it's quite systematic how civilian targets and civilians are being murdered in Iran. It's widespread terrorism, basically, and this woman, I forget her name, basically, but she's a former counterterrorism US officer, is saying this is exactly what it was. Fits entirely the US definition of terrorism. That's what's going on. They're trying to intimidate people, break their morale, kill their families, wait till a military officer goes home so you can kill the family with them. This is really quite a systematic campaign of terrorism in my mind. And that makes it a little bit different to the frontline scenarios of war that we've spoken of, South Lebanon and Syria, where you do have some sort of front line, even if you've got some random air attacks coming in. This is a whole series of random air attacks coming in. You see people going about their everyday life in the major cities there, and then all of a sudden there's an explosion and smoke from over there, and people just keep going about their business because, as Dimitri says, it's a big country, there are big cities, and there's a chance you could be hit, but also, by and large, there's not widespread destruction in the way that you see in Gaza or even in South Lebanon. Basically, it's a strange mixture of everyday life and these random terrorist attacks, basically.
And there was a double tap. I mean, they hit the school twice, so there's another proof there that they knew what they were hitting. I think they thought, it seems like Trump thought that 3 or 4 days this would be over, and that would be part of the operation, is to intimidate everyone, and they would just give up. Boy, they got the Iranian people wrong, didn't they? Dimitri, do you think
They
that
did.
you agree then with Tim that this was, it's hard to accept as a normal human being that this is not a collateral damage. This was a direct targeted hit on school children. Hard. It's unbelievable.
Absolutely. They used a weapon in this in Le Merde. Tim mentioned the young footballer, 12-year-old boy. They used a weapon that they hadn't tested in combat before. This thing explodes above the surface and it's packed full of tungsten pellets. Its obvious purpose is to spread carnage far and wide. They used it on a school and a sports complex, for God's sake. And this boy, was lying in bed with these metal bars coming out of his leg, and his dream was to be a footballer, and I think it's quite clear that he's never going to play football again.